The knock on Harrison Abbott's penthouse door came at 8 in the evening, 3 days before his wedding, and when he opened it to find Christine Parker standing there with rain-soaked hair and mascara streaking down her cheeks, his entire world tilted sideways. "Chris," he breathed, his hand tightening on the doorframe. "I know I shouldn't be here." Her voice was hoarse, breaking on every syllable. "I know it's wrong and I know you're getting married, but I couldn't let you walk down that aisle without telling you the truth." Harrison stood frozen, his 6'3" frame blocking the doorway as if his body could somehow protect him from whatever she was about to say. He hadn't seen Christine in 2 years, not since the day she'd walked out of his life without explanation, leaving only a note that said she couldn't do this anymore. 2 years of unanswered questions, sleepless nights, and eventually a careful rebuilding of his heart that had led him to Sophia, his fiancée. "You need to leave," he said, but the words lacked conviction. "I was scared." Christine took a step closer, and he could smell her perfume, the same one she'd always worn. "2 years ago, I was terrified of what we had. Your world, Harrison, it's so big. The media, the expectations, the pressure of being with someone like you. I panicked and I ran, and I've regretted it every single day since." Harrison's jaw clenched. He was the founder and CEO of Abbott Industries, a manufacturing empire that produced sustainable building materials and had made him a billionaire by 35. His wealth had always been a complication in his relationships, but with Christine, he'd thought they'd moved past that. She'd been a high school teacher when they met, grounded and real, and he'd fallen for her precisely because she didn't care about his money. "You left," he said, his voice hard. "You didn't even give me a chance to fight for us. I know." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I know, and I'm so sorry, but I love you, Harrison. I never stopped loving you. And I can't let you marry someone else without telling you that I'm ready now. I'm ready for all of it, the life you need to live, the person you need beside you. I'm ready to be that person." The elevator dinged behind Christine, and Harrison's heart sank. Sophia stepped out, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her designer dress immaculate despite the late hour. She was everything that looked right on paper, the daughter of another manufacturing magnate, someone who understood his world from birth. Their engagement had made sense to everyone, including him, and he'd convinced himself that practical compatibility was enough. "Harrison." Sophia's voice was sharp as she took in the scene before her. "Who is this?" Christine turned, and Harrison saw the exact moment she registered who Sophia must be. The color drained from her face. "I'm Christine Parker," she said quietly. "I'm sorry, I should go." "Christine was just leaving," Harrison said, finding his voice, but Sophia's eyes had narrowed with recognition. "Christine Parker, the ex-girlfriend who disappeared. My mother warned me you might show up." "Your mother?" Harrison looked at his fiancée in confusion. "Please, everyone knows about the great lost love of Harrison Abbott," Sophia said with a bitter laugh. "The tabloids had a field day when you two broke up, or rather when she vanished without a trace." Harrison had forgotten about that. The media attention had been relentless for weeks after Christine left. Photographers camping outside his office, speculation running wild about what had driven them apart. He'd hated every second of it, which was partly why Sophia's comfort with publicity had been so appealing. "I should go," Christine repeated, backing toward the elevator. "Yes, you should," Sophia said coldly. But as Christine pressed the elevator button with a shaking hand, Harrison felt something crack inside his chest. She'd come back. After 2 years of silence, she'd come back, and she'd said she was ready. The Christine he'd loved had conquered her fears and come to fight for him, and he was just going to let her walk away again. "Wait," he heard himself say. Both women turned to look at him. "I need time," he said, the words sounding weak even to his own ears. "I need to think." "You need to think." Sophia's voice rose. "Harrison, we're getting married in 3 days. 300 guests, the venue is booked, my dress is altered. What exactly do you need to think about?" "I'm sorry," he said helplessly. "I just need 24 hours." The elevator doors opened and Christine stepped inside. Her eyes met his one last time, full of pain and hope and regret, and then she was gone. Sophia stared at him for a long moment, her perfectly made-up face revealing nothing. Then she picked up her purse from where she'd set it down and turned toward the elevator. "Where are you going?" Harrison asked. "To my parents' house." She pressed the button, her movements precise and controlled. "You want 24 hours. Fine. But Harrison, if you're having doubts about marrying me 3 days before our wedding, then maybe we need more than 24 hours. Maybe we need to really examine what we're doing." The elevator took her away, and Harrison was left alone in his penthouse, the ghost of Christine's perfume still lingering in the air. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat in his living room with the lights off, staring out at the city skyline and remembering. Christine had come into his life 3 years ago at a charity fundraiser for education. He'd been giving a speech about the importance of investing in schools, and afterward, she'd approached him with a list of very specific criticisms about his foundation's grant process. She'd been fierce and passionate and completely unafraid of him, and he'd been captivated. Their first date had been at a tiny Italian restaurant in her neighborhood, nowhere near the 5-star establishments he usually frequented. She'd insisted on splitting the check. Their second date had been a walk through a museum, where she'd told him stories about each painting that were probably completely made up but infinitely more interesting than the actual placards. By their third date, he'd known he was in love. She'd moved into his penthouse after 6 months, and for a year and a half, his life had felt complete. She'd brought warmth and laughter into his carefully controlled world. She'd left sticky notes with terrible jokes on his bathroom mirror. She dragged him to student theater productions and made him volunteer as a reading tutor at her school. She'd made him feel like Harrison the man, not Harrison Abbott the billionaire. And then one morning, he'd woken up to find her gone and a note on the pillow that said, "I'm sorry. I can't be what you need. Please don't try to find me." He tried anyway, of course. He'd called everyone she knew, hired investigators, driven to her parents' house in Connecticut. But Christine had been thorough in her disappearance. She'd quit her teaching job, moved out of the apartment she'd kept even while living with him, and vanished completely. Eventually, he'd been forced to accept that she truly didn't want to be found. Meeting Sophia had happened a year later at a business conference. She'd been there representing her father's company, and they'd ended up at the same dinner table. She was intelligent, articulate, and refreshingly direct about what she wanted from a relationship. No games, no pretense. She wanted a partnership with someone who understood the demands of running a major company. She wanted children eventually, a stable home life, and a spouse who wouldn't be intimidated by her own ambitions. It had seemed perfect, logical, safe. But as Harrison watched the sunrise paint the sky pink and gold, he had to admit the truth to himself. He'd been settling. He cared about Sophia, respected her, enjoyed her company, but he'd never felt for her what he'd felt for Christine. He'd never woken up in the middle of the night just to watch her sleep. He'd never felt like his chest might explode from the sheer joy of hearing her laugh. His phone rang at 7 in the morning. It was Marcus, his best friend and the CFO of Abbott Industries. "Please tell me the tabloid story I just read isn't true," Marcus said without preamble. "What story?" "The one claiming your ex-girlfriend showed up at your penthouse last night and Sophia left in tears." Harrison closed his eyes. Of course someone had seen and talked. His building had a doorman who'd probably sold the information before Sophia even made it to her car. "It's complicated," Harrison said. "Harrison, what are you doing?" "Sophia is great. She's stable, she understands your life, and she doesn't play games." "Don't throw that away for someone who broke your heart." Christine said she was scared, that she panicked. "And that makes it okay." Marcus's voice was sharp. "She left you devastated, man. I was there. I saw what you went through. Do you really want to risk that again?" "I don't know," Harrison admitted. "I don't know anything right now." "Then figure it out fast, because your wedding is in 3 days, and if you're going to call it off, Sophia deserves to know sooner rather than later." After hanging up, Harrison showered and dressed, his movements automatic. He needed to talk to Christine. He needed answers to the questions that had haunted him for 2 years. But he also needed to talk to Sophia. He owed her honesty, even if that honesty was that he didn't know what he wanted. He tried calling Sophia first, but she didn't answer. He left a voicemail asking her to meet him, then stared at his phone, debating. He didn't have Christine's number anymore. She'd changed it after she left. But she'd come to his penthouse last night, which meant she still knew where he lived. Would she come back? Or had his hesitation driven her away for good? The decision was taken out of his hands when his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Coffee shop on 5th and Morrison. 10 o'clock. If you want to talk. Christine." Harrison arrived at 9:45, too anxious to wait any longer. The coffee shop was small and crowded, the kind of place Christine had always loved and he'd learned to appreciate through her eyes. She was already there, sitting in a corner booth with 2 cups in front of her. "Black coffee, no sugar," she said as he slid into the seat across from her. "You still drink it that way?" "Yeah." He wrapped his hands around the cup, needing something to hold on to. "How did you get my address? I moved after you left." "I know. I've been keeping track of you." She looked down at her own cup. "I know that sounds creepy. But I couldn't just disappear completely. I needed to know you were okay." "I wasn't okay." The words came out harsher than he intended. "I was a mess, Chris. You destroyed me. I know." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry." "Why?" Harrison leaned forward. "That's what I need to understand. Why did you leave?" "We were happy, at least I thought we were happy." Christine took a shaky breath. "We were. I was happier than I'd ever been. But that was the problem, Harrison. I was so happy that I was terrified. Every day I'd wake up and think, this is too good. This can't last. And then I'd see articles about us in magazines, people speculating about when you'd propose, your mother making comments about how I wasn't from the right kind of family." "My mother was wrong," Harrison said fiercely. "I told her that." "I know you did. But she wasn't entirely wrong, was she? I didn't know how to navigate your world. I didn't know which fork to use at fancy dinners. I didn't understand half the conversations at your business events. I felt like an imposter, and I kept waiting for you to realize you'd made a mistake. So you left before I could leave you." "Yes." Tears welled in her eyes again. "I convinced myself I was doing the right thing, that I was saving us both from an inevitable, messier breakup down the line. I thought you'd be better off with someone who fit into your life naturally. Someone like Sophia." Christine flinched. "I saw the engagement announcement. She's beautiful and accomplished. Everything I thought you needed." Harrison sat back, processing this. Part of him understood Christine's fears. He'd seen how overwhelming his world could be for people who hadn't grown up in it. But another part of him was angry that she'd made the decision for both of them, that she hadn't trusted him or their love enough to fight through the difficulties. "Why now?" he asked. "Why come back 3 days before my wedding?" "Because I'm a coward," Christine said with a sad laugh. "I've been wanting to reach out for months, but I kept chickening out. I told myself you'd moved on, that I'd missed my chance. But when I saw the wedding date announced, something snapped. I couldn't let you get married without at least telling you the truth. Even if it doesn't change anything, even if I'm too late, you deserve to know why I really left. Harrison's phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. We need to talk. Coming to your office at noon. He showed Christine the message and she nodded. You should go, you have a lot to figure out. Will you be around if I want to talk more? I'm staying at the Riverside Hotel, she said. Room 412. Harrison, I meant what I said last night. I love you. I never stopped, but I also understand if you can't forgive me. I understand if you choose Sophia. She's probably better for you anyway. Don't tell me who's better for me, Harrison said, a flash of his old humor returning. That's my decision to make. Christine's smile was watery but genuine. Fair enough. Harrison made it to his office 15 minutes before noon, his mind churning. His assistant, Maya, took one look at him and brought him a strong cup of coffee without being asked. Rough night, she ventured. You could say that. For what it's worth, the internet is going crazy. Half the people are Team Christine, half are Team Sophia, and everyone has an opinion about what you should do. Harrison groaned. How bad is it? There's a hashtag trending. I won't tell you what it is. That's probably for the best. Sophia arrived exactly at noon, looking as composed as ever. She'd changed into a sharp business suit, and her expression was carefully neutral as she took the seat across from his desk. Thank you for seeing me, Harrison began, but she held up a hand. Let me go first, she said. I spent all night thinking, and I've come to some conclusions. Harrison nodded, gesturing for her to continue. We've been engaged for 6 months, Sophia said. In that time, you've never once looked at me the way you looked at her last night. Sophia, I'm not finished. You've been a perfect fiancée. Attentive, considerate, respectful. We have good conversations, we enjoy each other's company, and we make sense on paper. But Harrison, I've been lying to myself about something important. Harrison felt his stomach drop. What? I thought I could build a life with someone based on compatibility and shared goals. I thought romantic love was overrated, something people made too much fuss about. But seeing you with Christine last night, seeing the way you looked at her even while trying to send her away, I realized I was wrong. That kind of love, that depth of feeling, it matters. And we don't have it. Harrison opened his mouth, then closed it. He couldn't argue with her. You're in love with her, Sophia continued. Maybe you've been in love with her this whole time, and I deserve someone who loves me like that. We both deserve that. I'm sorry, Harrison said quietly. I never meant to hurt you. I know, and I'm not hurt, not really. Maybe my pride is a little bruised, but honestly, I'm relieved. Sophia stood, smoothing down her skirt. I've been so focused on finding the right kind of partner that I forgot to look for the right partner, if that makes sense. This is a wake-up call for both of us. What do we tell people? The wedding, leave that to me. I'll handle the cancellations and the explanations. You just focus on figuring out what you really want. Sophia paused at the door. For what it's worth, I hope you and Christine work things out. Life's too short to not take a chance on real love. After she left, Harrison sat in his office for a long time, staring at nothing. Sophia had just made everything both simpler and more complicated. The path was clear now. The wedding canceled, the engagement over. But that didn't mean he knew what to do about Christine. He'd spent 2 years trying to get over her. 2 years of telling himself that she'd made her choice and he needed to respect it. Could he really just take her back now? Could he trust that she wouldn't panic and run again the next time things got difficult? His phone rang. It was his mother. Harrison Abbott, what on earth is going on? Victoria Abbott's voice was sharp with disapproval. Sophia just called and said the wedding is off. The tabloids are saying that teacher you dated showed up and ruined everything. Christine didn't ruin anything, Mom. Sophia and I ended things mutually. That girl was never right for you, Victoria said dismissively. I told you that 2 years ago. She doesn't understand our world. Maybe that was one of the things I loved about her, Harrison said, surprised by his own certainty. Maybe I don't want someone who understands this world perfectly. Maybe I want someone who challenges me to see beyond it. Don't be ridiculous. You need someone appropriate, someone who can be a proper partner in your business and social life. What I need is someone I love, Harrison said firmly. And I'm tired of letting other people's opinions dictate my personal life. I built a billion-dollar company, Mom. I think I can choose my own girlfriend. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, unexpectedly, Victoria laughed. Well, I suppose you've finally grown a spine when it comes to matters of the heart. Your father would be proud. Harrison blinked. His father had passed away 5 years ago, and he'd built Abbott Industries largely on the foundation his father had laid. Dad would have liked Christine. He probably would have, Victoria admitted grudgingly. He always preferred people with substance over people with pedigree. Fine. Do what you need to do. But Harrison, if you take her back, you need to be all in. Don't hurt that girl again by being half-hearted about it. After ending the call, Harrison grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. Maya looked up from her desk as he passed. Cancel my afternoon meetings, he told her. Actually, cancel everything for the rest of the week. Where are you going? To make the biggest decision of my life. The Riverside Hotel was a mid-range establishment that Christine would have chosen specifically because it wasn't the kind of place Harrison's circle would frequent. He took the elevator to the 4th floor, his heart pounding harder with each passing second. He knocked on door 412. There was a long pause, and then Christine opened it, her eyes widening in surprise. She changed into jeans and a sweater, and her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked exactly like the woman he'd fallen in love with 3 years ago. Harrison. I wasn't expecting you until did you talk to Sophia? Can I come in? She stepped back, and he entered the modest room. It was neat but impersonal, just a bed and a desk and a window overlooking the parking lot. How did it go? Christine asked nervously. She called off the wedding. Christine's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God. Harrison, I never meant, she said we both deserved real love, Harrison interrupted. She said I never looked at her the way I looked at you. Harrison, my turn to talk, he said, echoing her words from the coffee shop. For 2 years, I've been trying to move on from you. I've been telling myself that what we had was just one chapter of my life, and I needed to start a new one. I convinced myself that what Sophia and I had was enough, that practicality and compatibility were more important than passion. Christine was watching him with wide eyes, barely breathing. But you were right to be scared, Harrison continued. My world is overwhelming. The media attention, the social obligations, the expectations. It's a lot, and I never fully acknowledged how much I was asking you to take on. I should have been more understanding. I should have helped you navigate it instead of just expecting you to adapt. You did help me, Christine protested. You were always supportive, but I didn't see how much you were struggling. And when you left, I was so hurt and angry that I didn't try hard enough to understand why. I just felt abandoned. I did abandon you. That's exactly what I did. Harrison took a step closer to her. Here's what I need to know. You said you're ready now. What does that mean? What's different? Christine took a shaky breath. I've spent 2 years working on myself. I've been in therapy, dealing with my insecurities and my fear of not being enough. I've learned that running away from things that scare me doesn't make me feel better. It just adds regret on top of the fear. I've learned that love isn't about being perfect or fitting into a perfect mold. It's about being willing to show up and do the work, even when it's hard. And you think you can do that now? With me, with all the complications that come with my life, I know I can, Christine said firmly. I'm not saying it'll be easy. I'm not saying I won't still feel overwhelmed sometimes. But I won't run away again, Harrison. I swear to you, if you give me another chance, I will stay and face whatever comes. I'll learn the social rules. I'll deal with your mother. I'll smile at charity galas even when I'd rather be in sweatpants watching movies. Because being with you is worth all of it. Harrison felt something inside him finally settle. This was what he'd needed to hear, not just that she loved him, but that she understood what she was committing to. I'm not going to lie, he said. Part of me is terrified of getting hurt again. I know I would be too. But the rest of me has been in love with you for 3 years straight, even when I was trying not to be. He reached out and took her hand. The rest of me has been waiting for you to come back. Christine's eyes filled with tears. Really? Really? He pulled her closer until they were standing just inches apart. Sophia was right. I never stopped loving you. I just tried to bury it deep enough that I could function. I'm so sorry I hurt you, Christine whispered. I know, and I forgive you. The words felt right as he said them, like releasing a weight he'd been carrying for too long. But Chris, if we do this, if we try again, we need to promise each other something. No more running. No more making decisions alone because we're scared. We face things together, even when it's messy and complicated. I promise. She reached up and touched his face, her fingers trembling. I promise, Harrison. He kissed her then, and it felt like coming home after a long journey. Her arms wrapped around his neck, and he pulled her close, pouring 2 years of longing and loss and love into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. What happens now? Christine asked. Now we figure it out together, Harrison said. One day at a time. They spent the rest of the afternoon in her hotel room, talking about everything that had happened over the past 2 years. Christine told him about her time away, how she'd moved to a small town in Vermont and taught at a rural school, how she'd spent every day missing him but being too afraid to reach out. Harrison told her about the loneliness that had driven him to start dating again, about meeting Sophia and convincing himself that comfort was enough. Where are you living now? Harrison asked as the sun began to set. I actually just moved back to the city 2 weeks ago, Christine admitted. I have a tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn. I got a job at a charter school in the Bronx, starting next semester. You plan to stay, even if I didn't take you back. I needed to stop running, period. Whether that meant running from you or from the city or from my own dreams. I needed to plant roots somewhere and commit to building a life. She hesitated. Though I'll admit, I was hoping you'd be part of that life. Harrison's phone had been buzzing periodically all afternoon, but he'd been ignoring it. Now he glanced at it and saw dozens of messages from friends, family, and business associates, all wanting to know what was happening. There was also a text from Marcus that just said, "Whatever you decide, I've got your back." The world is going to have a lot of opinions about this, Harrison warned Christine. The tabloids are going to be brutal. They'll dig into why you left. They'll speculate about Sophia. They'll make up all kinds of stories. I know. Christine squared her shoulders. I'm prepared for it this time. And Harrison, I meant what I said. I'm not running from this. Whatever they throw at us, we'll handle it together. Together, Harrison repeated, liking the sound of it. They ordered room service for dinner, neither of them wanting to face the outside world just yet. As they ate terrible hotel hamburgers and laughed about how different this was from the fancy restaurants Harrison usually frequented, he felt lighter than he had in years. I missed this, he said. Just being with you without any pretense or performance. I missed it too, every day. Christine reached across the small table and took his hand. Can I ask you something? Anything? What was Sophia like, really? Harrison considered the question. She was smart and capable and direct. She always knew exactly what she wanted and wasn't afraid to ask for it. We had good conversations about business and current events. She made me laugh sometimes. But Christine, it was like we were colleagues who happened to be engaged. We never had what you and I have, which is this feeling like my heart is going to explode when you smile at me. This sense that the world is more vivid and interesting when you're in it. This absolute certainty that I'd rather be eating terrible hotel hamburgers with you than attending the fanciest gala with anyone else. Christine's smile was radiant. For the record, I feel the same way. Good. He stood and pulled her up with him, wrapping his arms around her waist. Because I have a proposition for you. What kind of proposition? Come stay at my place tonight, and tomorrow and the day after that. Move in with me again, properly this time. Christine bit her lip. Harrison, that's fast. Maybe we should take this slow, rebuild trust gradually. We could do that, Harrison acknowledged. Or we could acknowledge that we've both spent 2 years apart and we don't want to waste any more time. I love you, you love me. Why pretend we need to date for 6 months before we're sure? Your mother is going to have a stroke. My mother will adjust. She actually gave us her blessing earlier in her own way. Really? Christine looked shocked. Really? So what do you say? Want to give living together another shot? Christine pretended to think about it, but her eyes were dancing. Only if you promise not to fill the bathroom with expensive products I'm afraid to use. Deal. And you have to promise to leave me sticky notes with terrible jokes again. That I can do. She kissed him softly. Okay, yes, let's go home. They packed up Christine's few belongings and checked her out of the hotel. As they walked to where Harrison had parked his car, a photographer jumped out from behind a van, camera flashing. Harrison. Is it true the wedding's off? Are you back together with Christine Parker? Harrison felt Christine tense beside him, but she didn't pull away. He kept his arm around her shoulders and said calmly, We're not making any statements at this time. Christine, why did you really leave 2 years ago? Was there someone else? No comment, Harrison said firmly, steering Christine toward his car, more flashes, more shouted questions. Christine kept her head up, her expression neutral, and Harrison felt a surge of pride. This was what she'd been afraid of before, this invasion of privacy and public scrutiny. But she was handling it with grace. Once they were safely in his car, Christine let out a long breath. Well, that was fun. You did great. I only didn't panic because you were there. She reached over and squeezed his hand. See, already better at this with you beside me. The drive to Harrison's penthouse was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. When they arrived, the doorman did a double take at seeing Christine, but was professional enough not to comment. Harrison made a mental note to give him a generous Christmas bonus for his discretion. The penthouse looked exactly as Christine remembered it, she told him, except for a few new pieces of furniture and updated artwork. She walked through the space slowly, touching things, remembering. I used to live here, she said softly. For 1.5 years this was home, and then I threw it all away because I was too scared to believe it could last. Hey. Harrison came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. No more dwelling on the past. We're starting fresh, remember. Starting fresh, Christine agreed, turning in his arms to face him. I like the sound of that. They spent the evening rediscovering each other, talking and kissing and simply being together. Harrison felt like he was breathing properly for the first time in 2 years. This was what he'd been missing with Sophia, this sense of absolute rightness, of being with someone who understood him on a fundamental level. I can't believe I almost married the wrong person, Harrison said as they lay tangled together on his couch much later. She wasn't wrong, Christine said generously. She just wasn't right for you. There's a difference. You're too kind. I think I was being a coward, choosing safety over love. Then we both were cowards, and now we're both being brave." Christine propped herself up on her elbow to look at him. "Harrison, I need to ask you something serious." "Okay. What do you actually need from a partner, in terms of your business and social life? Because I want to understand the expectations clearly this time." Harrison thought about it carefully. "Honestly, less than you might think. I need someone who can attend major events with me occasionally. Someone who can make conversation with clients and board members at dinners. I need someone who understands that I work long hours sometimes and won't resent me for it. And I need someone who can handle media attention without falling apart. That's really it." "That doesn't sound so impossible." "It's not. But Chris, here's what's more important. I need someone who keeps me grounded, who reminds me there's more to life than Abbott Industries. I need someone who makes me laugh and challenges my assumptions and isn't afraid to tell me when I'm being ridiculous. I need you exactly as you are." Christine's eyes were suspiciously bright. "You're going to make me cry. Good tears, I hope. The best tears." She kissed him, long and sweet. "I'm going to work so hard to be what you need." "You already are," Harrison assured her. Over the following weeks, they settled into a new version of their old life. Christine started her teaching job at the charter school and came home every day with stories about her students that made Harrison laugh and sometimes cry. Harrison made more of an effort to leave work at reasonable hours, to be present for quiet dinners at home rather than always eating at business functions. They also faced the media storm together. The tabloids had a field day with the story of the runaway ex-girlfriend and the canceled wedding. Some outlets painted Christine as a homewrecker. Others portrayed her as a victim who'd been intimidated by Harrison's wealth. The truth, as always, was more complicated than any headline could capture. Harrison's mother invited them to dinner 4 weeks after they'd gotten back together. Christine was nervous, remembering Victoria's thinly veiled disapproval from before. "She's not going to like me any better this time," Christine fretted as they drove to the Abbott family estate. "She doesn't have to like you, though I think she will. She just has to respect that you're the person I've chosen." Harrison glanced over at her. "But for what it's worth, I think she softened. She actually asked me to bring you to dinner, which is her way of extending an olive branch." The dinner was less awkward than Christine had feared. Victoria was still formal and intimidating, but she also asked Christine genuine questions about her teaching career and listened to the answers with apparent interest. By the end of the evening, she'd even smiled a few times. As they were leaving, Victoria pulled Harrison aside. "She's different than she was before." "What do you mean?" More confident, more sure of herself. "Before, she always seemed like she was waiting for someone to tell her she didn't belong. Now she holds her own." Victoria paused. "I can see why you love her." "Does that mean you approve?" "It means I trust you to know what makes you happy. And Harrison, you're happier now than I've seen you in years, even happier than when you were with her before. Whatever she did to work on herself during your time apart, it worked." Harrison felt a weight lift from his shoulders. His mother's approval wasn't necessary for his happiness, but having it made things easier. 3 months after their reunion, Harrison and Christine were having a lazy Sunday morning when she brought up something that had clearly been on her mind. "I've been thinking about something," she said, curled up against his side. "What's that?" "Your world, the galas and charity events and business dinners, they're not my favorite thing, but they're important to you and to the work you do. So I was thinking, what if I found a way to make them feel more meaningful to me?" "What did you have in mind?" "I did some research, and your foundation does great work in education funding. But most of it is infrastructure buildings, technology, supplies." What if we started a program specifically for teacher development and support? I could help design it, maybe even run it. That way, when I'm at those fancy fundraisers, I'd feel like I was there for a real purpose, not just as arm candy. Harrison sat up, excitement building. Chris, that's brilliant. I've actually been wanting to expand our education work but didn't have anyone with real classroom experience to guide it. Really, really. We could create teacher fellowships, fund professional development, provide mentorship programs. You could transform how we approach educational grants. Christine's face lit up. Could I really? I mean, I'm not a business person. I don't know anything about running a foundation. You know what teachers need, which is more valuable? We can hire people who know business. We can't hire people who have your insight and passion. They spent the rest of the morning brainstorming, Christine's ideas flowing fast and excited. Harrison found himself falling in love with her all over again, watching her transform from someone who felt like an outsider in his world to someone who was actively shaping it to be better. By 6 months, they'd launched the Abbott Foundation's Teachers First initiative, with Christine as director. She split her time between her classroom and the foundation, and Harrison had never seen her happier or more fulfilled. The media coverage shifted too, focusing less on the scandal of their reunion and more on the meaningful work they were doing together. Marcus pulled Harrison aside at a charity gala one evening. "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For telling you not to take Christine back. I was wrong. You two are good together, better than you and Sophia ever were." "Thanks, man. That means a lot." "She's also helped you become a better leader," Marcus added. "You're more engaged with the human side of Abbott Industries now, less focused just on profit margins. The employees have noticed." Harrison glanced across the ballroom to where Christine was deep in conversation with a group of teachers who'd received fellowship grants. She was animated and passionate, completely in her element, and his heart swelled with love and pride. "She makes me want to be better," Harrison said simply. As they approached their 1-year reunion anniversary, Harrison knew it was time. He'd known for months, really, but he wanted to do this right. No public spectacle, no pressure, just the two of them and a question he already knew the answer to. He planned a weekend trip to a bed and breakfast in Vermont, near the town where Christine had lived during their separation. On Saturday afternoon, they hiked to a viewpoint overlooking the valley, the autumn leaves blazing with color. "I used to come here when I lived in town," Christine said, gazing out at the view. "Whenever I was missing you too much to bear, I'd hike up here and remind myself that the world was big and beautiful and I'd figure out how to be okay eventually." "Were you okay?" "Not really. I was managing, surviving, but I wasn't truly okay until I came back to you." Harrison took her hand and turned her to face him. "Chris, this past year has been the best of my life. I know that's a cliché, but it's true. You've made me happier than I knew I could be. You've made my world bigger and more meaningful. You've given me a reason to build something that matters beyond just financial success." "Harrison, let me finish." He took a breath, his heart pounding. 2 years ago, you left because you were scared you couldn't be what I needed. But you were wrong. You were always what I needed. You just needed to believe it yourself. And now that you do, now that you're standing beside me as a true partner, I can't imagine spending my life with anyone else." He pulled the ring box from his pocket and dropped to one knee. Christine's hands flew to her mouth, tears already streaming down her face. "Christine Marie Parker, will you marry me?" "Yes," she said immediately, her voice breaking on the word. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Harrison slid the ring onto her finger, a simple but elegant diamond, nothing ostentatious, exactly her style, and stood to kiss her. She threw her arms around his neck and kissed him back with everything she had. "I love you so much," she said against his lips. "I promise I'll never run away again. I promise I'll spend the rest of my life being brave enough to stay." "I know," Harrison said, holding her close. "I trust you." They were married 6 months later in a small, private ceremony with just close friends and family. Harrison's mother cried during the vows, and Marcus gave a speech about how love was worth taking risks for. Christine wore a simple white dress and had flowers in her hair, and Harrison had never seen anything more beautiful. For their honeymoon, they went to Italy, retracing the steps of their early relationship when Christine had insisted on planning dates, instead of letting Harrison's wealth dictate everything. They ate at tiny trattorias, got lost in winding streets, and spent long afternoons just being together without the pressure of work or social obligations. "I want to tell you something," Christine said one evening as they watched the sunset over the Amalfi Coast. "What's that?" "I'm grateful for our separation, as painful as it was. I don't think I would have been ready to be your wife if I hadn't spent those 2 years learning to be comfortable in my own skin. I needed to find my own purpose and confidence, not just borrow yours." Harrison considered this. "I think I needed it too, actually. I needed to learn the difference between a relationship that looks good on paper and one that actually makes me happy. I needed to understand what I was willing to fight for. So we both grew up," Christine said with a smile. "And now we get to grow old together," Harrison added, pulling her close. 2 years after their wedding, Christine came home from her doctor's appointment with news that made Harrison's heart stop. "I'm pregnant," she said, her eyes shining with joy and fear. "We're going to have a baby." Harrison picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing and crying at once. "We're going to be parents. Are you ready for this?" Christine asked. "I know we talked about kids someday, but someday is suddenly now." "I've been ready since the day you came back to me," Harrison said firmly. "We're going to be amazing parents." Their daughter was born on a snowy December evening, tiny and perfect with Christine's dark hair and Harrison's blue eyes. They named her Charlotte, and from the moment Harrison held her, he understood love on a completely different level. Christine took a year off from her foundation work to be home with Charlotte, but she found ways to stay involved remotely. Harrison made a point of leaving work early whenever possible, wanting to be present for every milestone and precious moment. "You're a natural," Christine said one evening, watching Harrison give Charlotte a bath while making ridiculous faces that had the baby giggling. "I had a good role model," Harrison said, thinking of his father, "and I have an amazing partner in this." 3 years later, they had a son they named Henry. Their penthouse was transformed into a real family home, filled with toys and laughter and the controlled chaos of small children. Harrison cut back on his travel for Abbott Industries, delegating more and trusting his executive team to handle things he once thought only he could do. "I used to define myself by my work," he told Christine one night as they collapsed into bed after getting both kids down. "Now I realize that was only ever part of who I am. Being your husband, being their father, that's just as important, more important even. You don't miss the days when your life was just about building your empire. Not for a second." He pulled her close. "This is the empire that matters. Right here." By the time their 10th wedding anniversary arrived, the tabloids had long since moved on to other stories. Harrison and Christine had become old news, just another successful couple in the city. They preferred it that way, living their lives away from the spotlight as much as possible. They celebrated their anniversary with a quiet dinner at the same Italian restaurant where they'd had their first date, over a decade ago now. It was still a tiny hole-in-the-wall place, still serving the best pasta in the city. "You remember what you said to me on our first date?" Christine asked. "I said a lot of things. I was nervous and trying to impress you. You said that you'd built $1 billion company, but you didn't feel successful because you didn't have anyone to share it with. You said money could buy a lot of things, but it couldn't buy connection. Harrison smiled at the memory. I did say that. It was probably too honest for a first date. It was perfect. It was the moment I realized you were more than just a wealthy CEO. You were a real person with real feelings, and you were brave enough to be vulnerable. And what about you? What made you fall for me? Christine thought about it. You listened to me. Really listened, not just waited for your turn to talk. And you took my criticisms of your foundation seriously instead of getting defensive. You made me feel like my opinions mattered. They did matter. They do matter. Harrison reached across the table and took her hand. Chris, I know I say this a lot, but I need you to know. You coming back that night before my wedding, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. You saved me from making a huge mistake. We saved each other, Christine corrected. I was lost before I found the courage to come back. We both needed each other to become the people we were meant to be. They went home that night and checked on their children, both sleeping peacefully. Harrison stood in the doorway of Charlotte's room, watching his daughter sleep with her favorite stuffed bear clutched to her chest, and felt overwhelming gratitude for the life he'd built. What are you thinking about? Christine asked, coming up behind him and wrapping her arms around his waist. I'm thinking about how close I came to losing all of this. If you hadn't come back, if I'd married Sophia, I'd have a completely different life right now. Maybe not a bad life, but not this life, not this family. But I did come back. And you chose me, even when it was complicated and scary. That's what matters. Harrison turned to face her. You know what the best part is? I'd choose you again. Every single day for the rest of my life, I'd choose you. Christine's eyes filled with happy tears. That's the most romantic thing you've ever said to me. I've got a few more romantic things planned for later, Harrison said with a grin, leading her toward their bedroom. Oh, really? Really? It's our anniversary. We need to celebrate properly. As they closed their bedroom door, Harrison reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The love, the loss, the fear, the courage to try again. All of it had been necessary to create the life they now shared. He'd learned that being a billionaire didn't mean much if you didn't have someone to share your success with. He'd learned that real love was about more than compatibility on paper. It was about choosing each other every day, even when it was hard. He'd learned that sometimes the best things in life required taking risks and being vulnerable. And he'd learned that when you found the right person, when you found someone who made you want to be better and braver and more fully yourself, you held on tight and never let go. Christine had come back to him 3 days before his wedding to someone else, and he'd chosen her. It had been the easiest and the hardest decision of his life. But looking at the family they'd built together, the love they'd nurtured, the life they were living, Harrison knew with absolute certainty that he'd made the right choice. Sometimes the greatest love stories weren't about perfect timing or smooth sailing. Sometimes they were about finding your way back to each other after getting lost. They were about second chances and forgiveness, and the courage to believe that love was worth fighting for. Harrison Abbott had built an empire that made him a billionaire. But his true wealth was lying next to him every night, raising his children with him, making him laugh and challenging him to be better. His true wealth was the woman who'd been brave enough to come back, and the man he'd become by choosing her. Years from now, when their grandchildren asked them about their love story, Harrison would tell them the truth. He'd tell them about the woman who ran away because she was scared, and the man who almost married someone else because he'd given up hope. He'd tell them about a knock on the door 3 days before a wedding and a choice that changed everything. But mostly, he'd tell them that real love wasn't about fairy tale perfection. It was about showing up, being honest, and choosing each other over and over again. It was about building a life together, brick by brick, day by day, until you looked around and realized you'd created something beautiful. And he'd tell them that he'd do it all again, every painful and wonderful moment, because it led him to Christine and to the family they'd built, and to a happiness he'd never imagined possible. That was the real story. Not the tabloid headlines or the society gossip, but the quiet truth of two people who loved each other enough to keep trying, keep believing, keep choosing each other no matter what. And in the end, that was all that mattered.